first, so I can post these, this as a video. So, hi everyone, I hope you're having a good week. It's Thursday night, so you're almost to the end of the week. I'm gonna go over some questions from last week. If you have any specific questions, you can let me know. And if you need more like one-on-one help, you can always stay after class and we can go over if you just want me to help walk you through it, or if you need like more specific help than what we're doing right now. So we're going to start with questions, and I'm going to go over Illustrator a little bit. Two of you emailed me with problems. One I was not able to resolve, and I've been having the same issue all week with my own program. So sometimes there are glitches in these programs that can be super frustrating. And when that happens, I usually just find a workaround. Sorry, I lost track of who just joined. I want to make sure I mark you. I thought it would click. Okay. Sorry, who did I just let in?
I think it was Alpha.
I got Alpha, and that was just Haley right now. Okay, let's see who I don't have. Joe, let me see. No, okay. That's Jacob. I didn't get you. Okay. That's who it was. I usually just try to do roll as I'm letting you in just to save time. But sometimes if I get distracted or skip someone, or you're coming in a little late, then I might miss you just because the participants kind of shuffle on there. And then I have you in alphabetical order. So like I said, if you're ever marked not here and you were here, just let me know. Okay. Put that aside. I think we've got everybody. So reset, welcome. And who, you can like put it in the chat or feel free to talk. Did anyone really struggle with the assignment? I know I got a few emails about people that were struggling. Yeah, Faith, you did tell me that. So I'm going to go over it in a little more detail today. First, I'm going to cover two issues that were emailed to me. One was about the gradients not exporting properly. The gradients in Illustrator and InDesign, I found out today, currently have this weird glitch. And I think I looked on all these message boards today because I'm having the same issue with stuff I've been designing, and I'm super frustrated because I want to just export as a PDF, upload it, and have it look right. And there's some glitch right now with the gradients, and when you export them, they're not showing up. So my workaround today was I just exported them as a JPEG because it was actually for a presentation. And if I export as an EPS and drop them in, it was fine. It's just a weird PDF view thing. And so who had that problem? I think it was Gloria. You were the one that emailed me about your gradients not looking right.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I wasn't able to figure out why it's happening. What I just would do, like what I did today, was just exported it as a JPEG. But there are where you need those like vector files. So I'm sure we're going to get like a system update soon, or like an Adobe system update. I actually see here my Creative Cloud. No, it says they're all up to date. It did have a little red mark. So I think they're going to have to fix that glitch. And then if you work on a Mac, I know there's a new operating system update for that as well. And some of the message boards seem to allude to the fact that it was a Mac problem. Do you have a PC or a Mac, Gloriana?
Sorry, say that again?
You have a PC or a Mac?
I have both, but I edit on my PC.
Some of the message boards seem to say it was an Apple issue, but
clearly
it's an Adobe problem. So hopefully they will make that update and fix it. And until then, we'll just figure it out and work around it.
Alrighty, okay.
I'm having the same problem and I'm super frustrated and I'll just save it out in different file formats, but PDF is like the most common one that I send and use for people.
Anaya.
Go ahead. What question did you have?
Oh, sorry. Wow, lost my train of thought. But my question was, when you exported from Lightroom, did you do like the export for screens? Or do I just do like normal export?
I just always export a high quality PDF. You only need to
Okay.
export like, and you can just do that. Or if you need to save space because we're digital, we're all on screens, you can just export for screens. That's only an issue
Okay.
if later on you want to print your files. So you might want, and I say this in a couple projects later on, if you really like what you made, make sure you save it in high resolution in case you want to use it later or print it or do something else with it. But I usually give you specifications for sizes, but it's fine to submit everything in screen resolution as long as it looks crisp. If you open up your file and it looks good, then you're fine.
Okay.
Second issue that I was actually able to fix, I'm going to show you all because I think it's going to be it's a very common mistake. And this was Chrissy's assignment. So hold on just a second, actually. I had something else I wanted to pull up. Okay. Here it is. Back to Zoom. Okay. So when Chrissy uploaded hers, it looked like this. And so her assignment, you're working on the assignment, it looks fine. This is her file that uploaded. And then when it was time to view the PDF and submit it, it looked like this. And it was probably incredibly frustrating. And because your assignment is here, I can see it. Let me see it. I was locking the layers because I was messing with things. But if I unlock all of these layers, you can see the assignment is here. It was done properly. You did a great job on the assignment. But there's one little thing in Illustrator that you had messed up on at some point and you probably didn't even realize you did it. And then you couldn't figure out how you went back. So my clue was do you see this thing right here on the side? When I opened it up and I saw that, I immediately hit the artboard and it went over there and I knew exactly what you did. Because this is exactly the same as your size of your file that you submitted. So in Illustrator, when we go File, New, and we create a new file, and we have all of these options to do print or screen, and it has all these sizes for you. What it's doing is it's creating an artboard. So next week, we'll get into InDesign a little bit, and you'll see the difference between the way Illustrator works and the way InDesign works. But everything in Illustrator is used making an artboard. So you have this gray surface is like the top of your desk would be, and your artboard is like the actual piece of paper that you're working on. So if you want to create multiple page documents in Illustrator, you create multiple artboards. And Illustrator is a vector-based program, which means vector means, and we're going to go over this again next week too, the difference between this is that it's infinitely scalable and you can zoom in as much as you want and those lines still stay crisp and precise. So if your sizing is off in Illustrator and you don't realize it, it's almost impossible to tell because you can work at a tiny scale if you're zoomed in enough, or you can work at a really large scale and just be zoomed out and not really realize where your sizing is. So you could always turn your rulers on and that helps. And the difference between a vector file like this, where you can zoom in and scale it, if I were to take this whole thing, I'll leave the background for now, and bring it into Photoshop, which is a pixel-based software. You always get to see what I've been working on that day when I open my different programs. And I place it in there. And this is, I think I clicked on image size. So this is 1920 by 1080p at 72 DPI. This is the standard size of a screen for like most TVs and things like that and computer screens. But if I decide to scale this down and then hit return and it's scaled down now, and then I decide, oh, I actually want this bigger. Now I drop this in as an image. So see how those pixels are forming around it and it's no longer sharp? Because it's pixel-based software. So in Photoshop, it's actually really easy to tell right away if you've missized something or that you're off. So when I opened this file and I saw this little white dot and I clicked on artboard, I could tell the artboard is actually way over here. And if I click on it, you can see artboard 1. So this would be the paper, your theoretical paper size. And if you click on properties, that will show you have to keep your artboard selected. It's 8.5 by 11 points, not inches. So points are very small. So you accidentally created a very small document to work in. And then I'm sure when you opened it up, it was so tiny, you just started working over here. And you placed the file and then you just worked on top of that, which honestly, you did it right. You did it perfectly fine. You just didn't put your artwork on the artboard. So when you went to export the PDF, it didn't know that this was your artwork because it's not on the artboard. So an easy fix for this, you just click this artboard in the toolbar. You come over here and you can just hit 8.5. I think you can just type out inches and see that's the equivalent in points. And then 11 inches. And now you have an 8.5 by 11 artboard. You can bring everything over here. You can scale it to fit. Delete that little loose square. And then, so you'll see here, the background I actually have going off the artboard, but I'm just going to save it like it is. And then I think I still have this in downloads. Yeah. And then if I open up this PDF, you'll see that it's there. So that's what was happening. This is not an uncommon mistake for beginners. And these are the gaps that I like when you fill in for me, because things like creating an artboard and knowing where the artboard is in Illustrator is just intuitive for me. I've been doing this for so long, but I don't think it's obvious. So I'm glad that you pointed that out, because using artboards and not having it on the artboard is a common mistake, and missizing your artboard when you go to file new and not setting this to inches instead of pixels is also very common. And I've had students give me 8.5 by 11 point documents and they couldn't figure out what was wrong, but because you could design on a document that small in Illustrator and the vector-based program would still look right. So that's what was happening there. Does anyone else have any specific questions, or do you want me just to go over Illustrator a little bit more in depth? Who is really struggling with the pen tool?
I think I had the same problem that you were showing right now, like with the artboard. Like I was working on it before class, and then like I was trying to like export it, and like I think I created like an artboard, and like when I tried to export it, it was like really tiny and like small.
Yeah, so check your artboard size, and most likely you have it set to points or pixels instead of inches. And luckily in Illustrator, it's just an easy fix, and then you scale your artwork up and it's fine. If you did that in Photoshop, like if you accidentally started designing in like 72 DPI instead of 300 in Photoshop, there's no sizing that back up once you've gone small. and we'll go over that. Next week is all about what program to use and why. So let me get some stuff ready. I'm going to go over this a little bit more in depth just to give you a better feel for this. Did anybody decide to create a, gosh, what's it called? Discord account or a Discord thing for the class? Do you like Discord? Most students that have a lot of Jeremy Warner's classes really like Discord because they use it a lot.
I just made one for my other class, so I can make one for this one if you'd like.
If you all think that would be helpful and that's a way you like to communicate, you're more than welcome to. I see things like just I follow all these design accounts and things like that. So like just last night I saved a reel on Instagram that was like a cool pin tool hack that I thought like, oh, I need to share that. So I can put these things on Canvas and share links to those, but like if there's like a Discord platform too, I can always throw them up in there. So if you do go ahead and make that, share it and in the chat, and then I'll make sure I copy it and put it in an announcement as well. And it's just nice to have a place to talk and troubleshoot sometimes. So I'm gonna go back over to Illustrator. So one of the things that, let me see here. Sometimes too, so, okay, I'm in Illustrator. I'm just gonna work in Chrissy's file again, just because I already have it open. And you'll see here, this is the sketch, and it's dropped in a little bit large because it wasn't sized down. So I'm just gonna bring it down to fit better on the page and then lock that. So it's my sketch background. If any of you had trouble getting this part of it, you can drag images straight into Illustrator. So if I open up my desktop and let's just pretend that this file is the sketch, you can just drag it right in. Oh, or sometimes it opens up in a new file and then you cut it and you can paste it right in on a layer that's not locked. So see how, so this is why it's going to take a lot of practice and getting comfortable, because even just now I did 2 mistakes, but because I'm used to the programs and I know what to do, it didn't really slow me down. I'm just like, oops, and I could keep going. But this could be really frustrating if you're trying to drag in a file and it keeps doing this. And it did that because my layer was locked and I was trying to drag it into a layer that was locked. So it opened it up into a new file for me. You can also go File and Place, and you can place the file right in there. So once you have I'll leave those. I was going to delete those, but I'll just keep, yeah, I'm going to delete these for now. That way they don't confuse you as you're watching. So once you have this sketch layer in place and you lock it, then you're drawing on top of it. So what I tell you in the video is to use the pen tool and a couple shape tools as well. But if you get comfortable with the pen tool, you can absolutely draw anything. And the biggest rookie mistake with the pen tool is over clicking. And that's why I'll share that reel I saw with you, because it was a really useful guide to avoiding the over clicking. So you see a shape. I'm just going to start with the shape on the background. And if you're new at Illustrator and you're kind of working on that coordination and feel and click, you have a tendency to click, 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 click. And it's actually more of a click and a drag. So you click on main points and you drag to get these toggles. And then you can go back and click with this white arrow and you can refine those toggles to really get your points exactly where you want. And I like to usually, if I'm tracing something, do it with just an outline on. That way I can really see where I'm going. But see right here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 points. So it doesn't need to be click, 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 click. That's going to get really messy and difficult for you. And in fact, if you could do this in, like, say, everywhere it curves, let me check. It was hard time getting the curve as I was. Chrissy, were you using an actual mouse or did you have a trackpad?
I was using my mouse.
Okay, so it's just gonna be like, it's just gonna take some getting used to. So if you click and you leave your finger down, so don't pick up your finger from the mouse when you're clicking and dragging. So you hold your finger down and then you click on your next point and you hold your finger down and you drag. And see, that one wasn't quite off. And so then this toggle is way far. You kind of start getting a little crazy, but it's just going to take some practice and learning how to get comfortable with this. So then when you're closing it up, I didn't want it to have a sharp point on that end, so I clicked it. So anytime you just click, it's going to have a sharp edge. And anytime, let me copy this Discord link before I lose it in the chat really quick. Here, paste it here for now. Oh, it didn't. Hold on. Nope. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna lose this in the chat. That's what happens every time if I don't get it right now. Let's see if I'll go to my phone. Got it. Okay, so I've got the link saved and I'll put it in the announcement if anyone doesn't click on it right now and go to it. So anytime you just click with the pen tool, it's going to create a hard edge. And anytime you click and drag, it's going to give you those toggles so you can create a curved edge. And if you ever want to change your edges, you go in and you use this anchor point shift tool and you can click on it and you can make these edges change their shape. And then if I zoom in here, you can make your adjustments point by point with this white arrow. You can also do things where you combine shapes. So like if something's mostly a circle, just start by making a circle. And then you can use the scissors or the eraser to cut that point. And then you can adjust it. So the pen tool really is going to be your best friend, just kind of getting comfortable with it, getting used to the way these move around. And these are things, again, that you can't always see while I'm working on just the screen, but I'm also holding shift down a lot. So when you make things in Illustrator and you hold down shift, that keeps it proportional. So right now I'm clicking and I'm not holding shift. And you can see the circle gets kind of wonky and weird and just, it doesn't scale in proportion as I move it out. It can go any way. If I hold down shift, it immediately constrains that into its proportion and it stays a perfect circle. And as I make it bigger and smaller, it'll stay in place. Was there one particular element of this that someone really struggled with? Like, were the gradients difficult? Did you have trouble making a certain shape? What about the Pathfinder tools?
When I was putting in the gradient, it really only offered me the like grayscale version of it, and I basically just like clicked around until I got it right, but it was really hard to get it off the grayscale.
Okay, so gradients are a whole other fun thing, and I'm mad at them right now because of the glitch anyway, but we'll go over it because they can be really useful. They can add to your illustration. You can create a lot of depth. There's a lot of good uses for gradients in Illustrator. Did anyone try the fruit exercise, the assignment, the advanced version of this assignment that I forgot to unlock for a few days? If you did, oh, cool. I'm glad you tried it. So if you did it on that assignment, you can really see how those gradients do work really well to create depth or a highlight or things like that on different shapes. So we have here, if you don't have it open, window gradient, and that will open this gradient tool right here. There are 3 kinds of gradients. There's a radial gradient, a linear gradient, and a freeform gradient. Freeform gradient's really fun because you can just kind of click and adjust your points, but they're the ones with the most bugs right now. So far, linear and radial gradients have been part of this Illustrator software for years. So those are usually pretty stable, but sometimes I have trouble with freeform gradient because it is new and just getting like it to do exactly what I want. So you have to have your gradient tool open, and then if you have swatches, so there's no swatches here in this one, but you could also use your color. I'm just going to pop these out so you can see all 3 of them, and then swatches. I'm going to open a swatch library. I'm just going to use a default swatch library. Put it in here. So you can mix colors yourself and then drag them over to the swatch library. So if I have this color mixed and I want to save it, I just drag it over here. Oh, it doesn't, I'd have to drag it over here and it'll save it for me. So you can also work like that, where you just want to drag your colors, mix your own colors, and then save them over here. So if you have your swatches open and then you have your gradient open, and first thing you do, if you're like, you need to make sure, if you look over here where it's the fill or the outline, and you need to know where you're adding this gradient. So if you, there's been times before where I'm trying to change my gradient and I'm clicking on it and I'm like, why isn't this changing? And then I realize, oh, I'm changing the gradient on the stroke when I was actually trying to put the gradient in the fill. So that happens to me all the time too. So once you have the object you want to apply the gradient to, you just have to click on the gradient and it automatically adds it. And you can change it from linear or radial. But you probably don't want it to be these colors. So what you have to do is drag your colors in, or you can even click on your color and you can change it. So you can either click on a color and change it in color, or you can drag from swatches and pull it over. And you can add multiple colors to a gradient. And you can decide how you want it to look. If you want it to be linear, then this is basically the same flow that it'll go across the page. If it's radial, it's going from this is the center and it's going outwards. And then freeform is where you actually put a point here. So I put this point in, and now I say I want this point to be this color. And I want this point to be this color. I want this point to be this color. So freeform gradient is actually really cool because you have the ultimate control over it. And there'll be various uses of how you, ways you can use that. Let's see. So on top of this gradient palette, and see now if I want to edit my gradient and I have freeform gradient, I hit edit and my points pop back up. But I'm going to switch it back to linear so I can show you how to use the gradient tool. So I clicked on the gradient tool over here. It's in your toolbar. If you cannot find things in your toolbar, you need to click on these purple lines at the bottom, and then you'll get everything. Things are constantly hidden, like the way the toolbar sorts. So if you see a little arrow in the corner, that means there's more stuff behind there. So if you can't ever find something that I'm showing you in a video, click on the 3 dots or click behind one of these like little bottom corner arrows and it should be there. So the gradient tool makes this line and it goes across your object, and you can adjust it right on your object in real space. And you can also rotate that object and rotate the way the gradient goes. Let me move some of these palettes over because now they're in my way. What I really like about it is that you can also see this arrow, the crosshatch that's right there, if I click and drag that, I can drag the gradient across and extend it as far as I want to and decide where I want it to go. And then I can even refine it more by dragging these points and then see how it turns into a rotate circle, meaning I can then rotate it around. So you have a lot more control than you think you can, but it's easy to get off or to like not figure out how to move things, or just you start using these and, for example, accidentally turn it here. Now I'm trying to move it and I can't figure out like, okay, how am I moving this? It's not moving. It's not moving here. Oh, I have to move it here. Okay, how do I move the whole thing? Still not moving. Oh, okay, now it let me move it. So there's plenty of ways to get stuck. But just remember, you move it from the center, you rotate it from this bottom point when you see the rotate arrow, and then you can toggle these things around. If you ever need to change it, you can come over here and click radial. And if you still want to reset it at this point, then you get that gradient tool, and when you see that crosshatch, you pick your spot wherever you click and then wherever you drag. So I'm still holding the mouse button down at this point. Wherever I drag and let go, that's where my new gradient's gonna go. So I don't want anyone to get super hung up on this assignment and have it cause you any stress. Just practice it and produce the best lighthouse image you can and turn it in. And I will look at these. If I see something that's really off, I can write you a message. We can talk about it and see where your trouble is. But this will be a really good start on getting comfortable this week. And what you're doing this week actually can consist of much more simple shapes and will probably be easier because you started here first. But now you know where a lot of the things are. You should know how to change colors. You should know how to make objects and shapes and have some control with the pen tool. Any other questions for now about this? Okay, I'm gonna move on, but we can cover this more at the end of class if anyone needs some one-on-one help. And you can screen share and show me exactly what's going wrong with your system if you want to. Okay. The whole top of my list. Oh, another thing I wrote down that I wanted to talk about. Thank you for your survey responses. I got that from quite a few of you, and the majority of people who responded are beginners at the software. And then as expected, there are a few of you that have some familiarity with some of the software. I really liked your responses to what you hope to learn from this class. A lot of you are really interested in creative careers or just want to know how to do design. So what we are working on today is your foundation in design theory. So regardless of what industry you work in, what type of creative industry, or what type of design you'll be doing, this is where you start getting the difference between someone who knows something is good and someone who knows something is bad. So I'm sure we've all seen the random flyer that somebody did in whatever program they could get done and pass it around, and everyone's like, this is great. And maybe it's great, maybe it could have used a little work, but it's functional and it's working. Well, what we're going to start learning in these next few weeks are the things that it's going to change from being like, oh, that's fine, to, ooh, we can make this better. So I just wanted to say, I really liked your responses. I know a lot of you said that you were interested in graphic design specifically, or things that are relating to that, especially if it's animation, gaming, podcasting. So these digital careers as well, everything is going to be visual. You're going to post things, you're going to need graphics, and you're going to need to show people what you are doing, and this will be a really big help in that. Moving on. Oh, I also had someone mention something about being absent and things like that. Just email me and just let me know what's going on or if you missed things. And then I'm sure a lot of you also figured out too, we have due dates for stuff. If you ever tell me that you're struggling with something, you get a little bit of extra time to turn that in. You will start getting docked after a while on your points, and I will go over the grid when we go over the assignment for tonight. But first I'm going to do another PowerPoint presentation. Let me make sure I have it up. Any questions so far? Okay. I had to do a Zoom class on Tuesday night and it was so boring. We were given a PDF ahead of time via email, and then this person literally just read the PDF to us. And I was like, why do I have to be here in this class? So it also made me super self-conscious. And I thought, oh gosh, I hope when I'm on Zoom, it's not this boring. I hope it's not as mind-numbing as that was. So I always think this stuff is super interesting, but again, I understand. Okay. This is linked in the module. We are at week 2. So if you go to modules, let me click on student view to make sure everything is visible and uploaded. So on week 2, principles and elements of graphic design, and project 1 is principles and elements of graphic design. If you click on the page, you'll see I have outlined here what you'll be doing for the week. You can click on the PowerPoint if you want to reference back to it and look at it again for any reason. I also have a couple links here to just web pages that I like that cover the same content. So you can read over those if you want. It's just supplemental content that reinforces what I'm going to be talking about in this. All right. So this is an introduction to the principles and elements of graphic design. Movement, balance, unity, contrast, emphasis, line, and color. Those are all design principles. Design elements are the building blocks of graphics. So line, color, shape, and texture. One of the easy ways to remember is like the principles are like how something's used, and the elements are the physical things that are used. So lines can be straight or curved. Lines can indicate motion or direction. And then how are lines used in this composition on this slide? So do you see all the different ways lines are used here? Now we haven't talked about the theory yet, but if we come back to this image, you'll start spotting these things instantly. So first of all, lines are used to make this target. And then lines are used to indicate motion. And then arrows are a really great functional use of line. It's a very common way we're used to seeing lines that indicate direction. Color and contrast. Using color can enhance or detract from a composition. Color wheels help determine which colors are in greatest contrast. If anyone has taken art, you're probably very familiar with the color wheel already. We have a whole week on color theory and it's super fun. And we get into analogous and complementary colors in much more detail. If you haven't taken an art class and this seems really foreign to you, basically just remember analogous colors are similar and they are adjacent to each other on the color wheel. So that would be your greens and your blues, your purples and your blues, your reds and oranges, things like that. They sit next to each other. Complementary colors are opposite each other, and typically a color that has a complementary color will create the most contrast in a design. So color in design, use color to label or show hierarchy. You'll hear me say hierarchy so many times as we get into typography and logo design and all of those things. So hierarchy is really what tells people how to move through your design with their eyes and what to read when. Color can represent or imitate reality. So like in this situation, it's reflecting the ocean scene. Color can unify, separate, or emphasize. So you can see here, the colors of this website are really trying to create a harmonious ocean scene but then they have this bright orange color to bring your eye to see that important information. Color can also decorate, and you want to use color consistently. So two things that will set you apart: if you can master a good theory of color, if you have a good sense of color and how to use it, and you have a good sense of typography, you will immediately look like a better designer, regardless of what you can do in these programs. If you can just start analyzing typography and color aesthetically and learn how to pair these things in harmonious ways, or you know how to create contrast and you know how to create hierarchy, then it's going to set you apart. Shapes. So shapes are enclosed objects that can be created by line or created by color and value changes that define their edges. I mean, shapes. Whoever thought we'd be defining such a simple thing? I mean, you learn your shapes early on in school, but you start to forget that they're things that you can use as a tool because it just becomes intuitive. Like, everyone knows what a circle is, you know what triangles are and squares, but shapes in this project for this purpose are going to take on a whole new meaning. So a shape is anything that's an enclosed object that has an edge. Texture. So texture is the surface look of an object created by varying dark and light areas, roughness, smoothness, or depth. So you can see here, these are all flat blocks of color. There's no gradient, there's no actual pixels that indicate that something has a texture. You'll see things like if we drop in a JPEG of a linen texture or a canvas texture, or something looks like you can touch it, that's texture as well. But you can even create texture just by creating repetition and using shape in the right way. So it almost looks like you can touch these things even though they're just flat blocks of color. And this one has a line work that makes it look like it's almost popping out. So design principles. Design principles are ways in which elements are used. So remember, the principles are how you use them and the elements are what you're using. So movement, balance, emphasis, and unity. Movement is the use of lines, color, and repetition to create the illusion of motion. Curved forms or lines, repetition or geometric forms, fuzzy lines or outlines. So nothing on this page is actually moving, but because of the way the shapes and the lines are used, it's creating the illusion of movement. That's why arrows are one of the most intuitive ways to show movement. We all are used to seeing arrows. The way these circles are placed have that radial ripple effect. And then just putting these squares in varying ways looks like they're moving through the page. Balance. So balance is the act of comparing or estimating two things, one against the other, and the contrast between. Empty space or white space and filled space, text and images, color, no color, and different colors, texture against flat colors. So there's lots of ways to create balance. You'll hear me say this a lot when we get into the critiques, like, oh, it feels really balanced, it feels harmonious, it looks intentional. Those are all different ways to say that something has some really good balance. Balance doesn't always mean symmetry, although new designers tend to gravitate towards symmetry because it's an easy way to create balance and you know that it's going to be right. But centering things and using symmetry isn't the only way to create balance. And you can see here in this image, again, these are just shapes on a page. It's two circles, a triangle, and a very thin rectangle. And do you all see the balance in this shape, in this image here? There's the illusion that, sorry, there's that. The illusion that this red circle is heavier than this blue circle and that it had to be balanced by this shape here on the triangle. So it looks like it's doing this, but it's just shapes on a page. So it's a visual balance. Balance and composition. There are three different types of balance when using color, shape, and position: symmetry, asymmetry, and radial symmetry. Symmetrical or formal balance, you can usually identify at least one of the three lines of symmetry: horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. So things might be balanced this way, or this way. And like I said, this is a very common way to use symmetry. when you're starting out because it's intuitive and it's pretty easy to do. Symmetrical balance can be one of these things, and see, oops. See here with the triangle, it's going right through the page, but there is equal space and weight from that triangle inside this rectangle. Examples of symmetrical balance are things like a butterfly. Butterflies are repeating the two shapes on each side. And then this is diagonal symmetrical balance, where that weight of that pencil is lined up in this space to create equal weight. Here's an example of asymmetrical balance. So you're still placing these shapes in this artboard with balance on each side, but it's not following one of those lines specifically. And then radial balance is where something is balanced from the inside out, radiating out, radial. So this one has the repeating shapes that I'm really bad at clicking through PowerPoint, and I'll go back all the time. Sorry about that. This one radiates out, and this one is creating it through the rotation of these bees and this shape, and it goes from the center outward. So unity. Unity, the correct balance of composition or color that produces a harmonious effect. Again, words that you'll hear me say all the time as we're critiquing and talking about design. And these are words I hope that you start picking up and learning how to use, because in a professional setting, it's really going to help you, one, convince people that you know what you're talking about, and convince them that your design is great and that they should use it. It doesn't matter if you have you can have some more time on the lighthouse assignment if you're struggling with it. You don't have to like email me individually. I typically each week, sorry, I just read the chat, so just let's pause the Unity talk for a minute. I look in the assignment before class, and if there aren't a lot of assignments turned in, I'm assuming that you are struggling with it. So I can give you an extra couple of days. If by next week you still don't have it turned in, it's going to get docked. Hope that answers that question. Okay. So unity, it's the correct use of balance and composition. I say this a lot. It doesn't matter if you have 10 more years, 5 more years, 20 more years of experience from the person you're designing for. They're going to voice their opinion and tell you that they think they know things, and it doesn't matter. So having this vocabulary and being like, oh no, this is really balanced, and this is why, like, this is a really harmonious composition, and your design is, like, for example, oh, it's for a beach house. You want it to feel really serene and have like a peaceful feeling. So I use this balance in this composition to make sure that it reflects that peaceful, harmonious feeling. And then someone would be like, oh yeah, okay, I see that. Instead of just like, oh, I just, you know, lined it up. I thought this is how it looked good. So there's a difference in the way that you start talking about design when you have all of this vocabulary and you start understanding theory, versus just moving things around and intuitively doing it till it looks good, but not really knowing why you're making those decisions. As you get better, a big part of this will be intuitive, but you're also doing all of those calculations on the back end in your brain without even realizing it. And then it becomes easier and easier to talk about your designs. Okay, emphasis. Emphasis is used to express a particular, or with stress or force. It's really, color and emphasis is pretty easy because you just have a contrasting color and boom, just like this smiley face. But it's also using shape to emphasize one of these over the other. This uses this big circle to emphasize the logo design here and add some contrast to it. So emphasis is calling attention to one thing by using one of those elements of design. So in summary, The basis of good design is use of design elements and their thoughtful application in the form of design principles. So if you're using these elements of design and you know why based on the principles, then you probably have a good design. And you'll start seeing it when you look at other design too. Clearly identify what you're trying to accomplish and use design to convey your message. So don't just randomly move stuff around. Try to have a thought and intention as you're creating these designs by knowing what principle and element you want to use, like what you want to emphasize, or if you are trying to intentionally create motion, or if you're trying to create a balance and harmonious effect. And then as always, you can brainstorm alternatives. So with that, close this PowerPoint. The next thing we're going to do is a brief group activity / exercise. I don't know if you saw it in the module, but I asked you to have something. We're going to do some composition practice. So I usually use pieces of construction paper that I just kind of rip up or cut up, and I didn't have any here today. So I'm actually going to just use paper clips for mine. I'll give you like a 5-minute break, and if you need to source something. So if you have either a sheet of white paper or just any flat surface in front of you, and then try to find a handful of objects that are relatively the same shape and size. And it can be anything. If you have pennies, I've had students do this with candy. Oops, I'm dropping mine. Or again, contrasting pieces of paper. You can get leaves, whatever you've got. We'll just take a 5-minute break and you can source some of those things. And when we come back, I'll walk you through the activity, and then we'll do breakout rooms and kind of talk about how that goes. And that'll lead us into our assignment. Okay. So 6:30, be back here. Okay. Hopefully you're back. If you ever need to take a break during class, that's fine. I also sometimes this class is right at dinner time. So I don't care if you're eating dinner. I don't care if you're you need to just walk away for a minute. There are times when our cameras will be on, but again, most of you have your cameras off now. So hopefully you are listening, or maybe you're side listening. Either way. But yeah, just take breaks when you need to, but there will be times where I'll just stop class and do a 5-minute break like that as well. So what we're about to do now is just a quick little exercise. And the point of this exercise is so that you can see that composition, you can find composition in random things, and that there's principles and elements of design, even when you're not intentionally creating them. Things will happen and you can make those associations. So I hope you all were able to find something to do this exercise with. Like I said, I usually use paper. I found paper clips this time. When I was in school, before I even got to a computer-based class, I got to take 3 design classes, and they were design classes. It wasn't like your traditional art class. It was a class on design that was not even based on a computer. And we did a lot of exercises like this with cut paper and practiced creating composition and design. And some of those were random exercises, and some of those were exercises where you intentionally place things where you wanted them to go. So I don't know if times have changed all that much. This is the only pure graphic design class here. I know there's probably some digital art courses, and we have other digital-based design courses in the communications program. But as far as graphic design goes, this is really the one class. So you don't have as much of a foundation or working up to this. We just throw you right in there. So this is going to give you a little background on composition and design. So what I want you to do, I like to have a white paper. If you just have a surface in front of you, that works too. I've had, like I said, I've had students do this with pieces of candy, whatever they find on their desk. And I just want you to randomly drop things in front of you. And you can do it You can just drop it, you can drop it slowly, just kind of find it where you want it to go. You can see here, this is a little heavy cardstock, so I can kind of lift it and you can see, move it into the light, how my paper has these randomly scattered about it now. Can you see? So I'm going to place it back down on the flat surface. And then what I want you to do is take your phone. Now, if you don't have a phone with a camera on it, that's fine. Just make it work by just deciding. What I want you to do is basically decide where you're going to crop this and decide where the design is in the system. So I'm going to use my phone. That's the easiest way for all of you to do it, especially because I would like you to share when we go into the breakout room with everyone else. And I always keep my my grid and alignment tool turned on my phone. If you don't, that's okay. It doesn't have to be straight up and down, but I do have a grid here that will kind of help guide me. And I'm just going to zoom in and I'm going to decide. So I have this straggler out here. Do I cut that out? Is it more balanced? Where's the balance? Where's the maybe accidental symmetry? Where's the design in this random collection of paper clips that I have in front of me? And I want you to do the same thing with your design. And that might mean cropping something out, or that might mean zooming way in, and you can find where you want it to go. And when you like it, you take that picture. I am going to go with that here. So I'm going to send this to the computer. I'm going to do one more. Of the whole thing, and we'll crop it in the computer as well instead of me zooming in with my phone. So I'm going to share Photoshop with you all here. So this is the picture I just took. And this is the whole piece of paper where I dropped these paper clips. I was actually looking at it on its side. So let me just rotate it here. And this is the crop that I did. So this is my whole artboard. You can see it kind of created a line across here and then one stray paper clip over here. So you might feel like some of these could be a stretch, but just practice making those connections. What is happening here? I think the way that they fell, there's clearly some movement. It looks like these shapes randomly fell across the page. There's a little bit of symmetry that starts to happen between these two. So I could crop here. What I chose to do was crop here, and I used these two, this big one and this small one, to balance out this small straggler that's over here. So all of this negative space is helping create balance between this and this shape right here. And you kind of have this triangular movement happening between these. So I know what I just did, it might seem far-fetched or these random connections, but it's really good practice in starting to identify these principles and elements of design. And I want you to go ahead and do that now. So whatever you dropped, sorry, hold on. Back to it. I hope you all did that. Did we all drop our stuff on a surface? And then I want you to take your picture, do your crop, and I'm going to put you into groups. I want you to share your composition that you created. I want you to pick your favorite one. And when we come back, we're gonna just share the favorite one that was chosen from the group. And I'll probably jump around into these breakout rooms so that I can see what you're doing. Okay, we'll do 4 to 5. All right. It's nice to see your faces. So I'm just gonna go with room 1 down to 4, since 1 was like one of the first rooms back. I assume you're pretty on top of it. So we'll wait for room 4 to get back in here. Okay. Everybody should be back. So was it fun to see what other people did? Or was it pointless random exercise? I think what's fun about doing things like this, and if you really want to experiment and keep growing your skill, you could just start doing this with anything. And who here has been to a modern art museum? Like a MoMA or the Broad or something like that, where you're seeing works of art on the wall and you want to understand it, but it also seems kind of weird. And you're like, is this even art? Well, the difference between things like this, where it looks like something random and there is a giant photograph blown up in the SF MoMA, and it's of these paper clips, is those principles and elements of design. There's a lot more to it than that, but you start to make these connections and see things in pieces to create like tension, movement, linear space, the way it's balanced. And you start to see how really anything can have a great composition and just have a cool effect on you and who's viewing it. So let's start with group 1. Whoever was picked as the favorite, do you want to share it? Do you want to screen share, or you could just even hold it up if it's easier? Group 1 was
I think we just chose mine because I had it on my computer, and I can share my screen. I have no problem with that.
okay, go for it.
So I think that's gonna work. Can you see my screen?
There it goes.
That was like the cropped image. However, I didn't actually crop it. I just like moved my phone closer to the paper and like physically cropped it that way. But originally it was 10 pennies that I had just dropped on a blank 8x11 sheet of paper. And I liked the way that these pennies fell, and that the brightest one was like at the top and a little bit further into the right. There are 3 that are more dull and at the bottom.
Okay, that's a great analysis. So because you use pennies, there's a couple of things happening here. There's a use of color, because pennies naturally have different color tones to them. And then what other principles and elements can you see here based on the lecture? If you can, I mean, I'm sure you didn't memorize all of them.
Well, I felt like movement is kind of apparent, because they're just slightly like different heights and at different like they're not in a straight line.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure that it's completely balanced, but I felt like having, at least for the 3 on the bottom, having the 2 that are somewhat asymmetrically balanced, and then the middle one off to the right kind of gives a sense of balance. But I'm not really sure about that.
Yeah, the way these pennies are occupying the space definitely gives them that illusion of movement, but still overall, because of the way you cropped it with the space on the side and kind of fit them into this page, there is a balance happening here too. So yeah, good job.
Thanks.
We'll move on to group
Okay.
2. Okay, group 2.
So we chose mine. I did like paper clips,
Oh, cool.
and I liked how the cats landed at the top, and then like they're kind of in like these lines. I thought was nice.
Just a second. Can you like hold it still? I'm gonna screenshot it. Your paper clips are really cute.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought they
Hold on,
had
one more time. I missed it.
okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. I know, this is what we do when we're on Zoom as opposed to being in person. Okay. So even the lines on the paper are adding an element to your design here.
Yeah, I thought like them landing like in these like little lines were
Mhm.
cool, and then I thought they were balanced because the cats are on top and like the normal ones are on bottom. So I don't know.
Yeah, I like the way the cats fell in real space. Like there's not one upside down. Like they actually fell where you would see them as a shape.
Mhm.
And then you have color, line, movement. Very cool. All right, so is this kind of catching on? This is what we're doing here, making some like connections between random compositions, and then we're gonna go into intentional composition. So room 3.
Sorry, that's me. Okay, this was ours.
Oh yeah.
And I just did safety pins like on my desk. I know the glare is kind of taking away from it, but I like this one. I when I zoomed out, I had it at like an angle so the back was like blurry, and it was focused on the front, but then when I zoomed in, I just liked how these 3 like fell together. And in the picture, they're like way more clear than the rest of them. It's hard to tell on here, but
Yeah, but I can tell you created some depth there with the way that you chose to photograph it. Like,
yeah. And I just liked how it turned out, I think.
and this is what I want you, this is the whole point of this, is that it seems so silly that safety pins on a desk and a photo, but that's a cool image, right? You like that image. It could be like the background to your like phone wallpaper or something. Like you could use that for something else. So I want you to see how intentional you can be and then how random you could be, but you can find like design connections anywhere. So good job.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, last group, room 4. Anybody?
I don't think we chose on who to show.
Okay. Does anyone want to volunteer? A quiet group. Nobody wants to go.
I don't think mine was really good. Like all I had was keys and the glasses cleaner, but I think someone had like pennies or random coins. As I that one.
Yeah, I did. I can go. I did this one. It doesn't really have like a shape, but I did think that there was like balance between it.
So there you go. Let's compare this one to the first one that Faith put up, right? Was it Faith with her pennies?
Yeah.
And this one has a lot more happening here. So repetition. One of the choices you'll have in the assignment is rhythm and repetition, and that's all about like excess and creating like a pattern and things like that. So I think it's really interesting to compare this one to the first one we saw with the pennies and what's different about them and what's the same. there's like a story to be told just based on the placement of objects, you know, like something happened here. The other ones felt like they were maybe moving or were just tossed. This one actually has a little more stability in the composition, I think, because there's more visual weight. When I say things like that, does that sound totally weird and abstract, or are you like, oh, okay, that makes sense?
That makes sense.
Okay. I'll say things like that a lot, and hopefully when I say them, it puts that connection together and you're like, oh, okay, and you have new vocabulary, new verbiage to describe something that you're seeing. But honestly, if I say something like that and you're like, that was weird, I don't know what she's talking about, you can also say that and I'll elaborate on it further. But this one does feel like it's more stable, it's heavier, there's more pieces here. I mean, there's also a variation in size with those quarters coming in with the pennies. So it just has more stability than the first design with the pennies moving up and into, I mean, and see, that's even me making an interpretation based on the distance of those pennies. And then the way the color with the shiny penny on top, I assume they're moving up. They could have been coming down, but that's how I interpret it based on those elements of design that were happening. So cool. Good job with this exercise, everyone. I'm going to go over the assignment now, and then you are free to go work on it or stick around for questions. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, you have a really fun assignment this week, and it's your first project. So remember, a project is your chance to be really creative, and it's very open to what you can do, and you can really have fun with it and experiment. And I have lots of examples from past students if that helps you. Are we a class that likes to see lots of examples because it helps us get ideas? Or are we a class that gets overwhelmed and the more I show you, like it almost freezes you and you don't know what to do because you've just gotten all your ideas taken away?
Examples, please.
Okay. There are two kinds of people. There are people that like lots of examples, and then there are people that feel like, oh, well, now I don't know what to do because you just showed me and I don't want to have, you know, once it's in your head, that's all you can think about. But examples are always helpful. So I will show you lots of examples of this project. So principles and elements of design, you always have your set of specifications. So project 1A, this is a 2-part assignment. You'll start by downloading this Illustrator document to use as a template, or you can make your own grid and you can do it in your sketchbook by hand. I personally love to do this part of it in my sketchbook. You can do this by hand way faster than you can do it by moving shapes around in Illustrator. And if you do decide to sketch it out and do it in a sketchbook, just take a picture and upload it. That's all you have to do. And so if I come over here to Illustrator, that is this document that I had open. I give you all the elements, all the principles, and then these random shapes that you can use if you want to, or you can add your own shapes. So I'll come back to this in a second. Let me pop back over to the assignment. So when you open the AI file, you will find a grid with content on the artboard that you can move around. You will select 4 elements and 4 principles from the list. If you're doing this in a sketchbook by hand, you make a 4-part grid. And you get to draw in each of these little squares. You also, if you have a tablet and you like to use a digital pencil, you can do it that way too. Using only basic shapes, you're going to illustrate the combinations of the principles and elements of design in each section of this grid. So the combinations are intersections of the columns and rows. You're going to place your solutions inside the grid. You may use shapes I provide on the artboard, or you can create your own, and you have to fill in every square of the grid. If you're really struggling with one, just put something there and move on, and maybe doing the next one will help you analyze, and you can always come back and change it. You want to have something in every square. Not every square has to be a masterpiece. This is an exercise on critical thinking and brainstorming. So then you're going to save your completed grid as a PDF, turn it in with your final poster and then upload it as you upload a photo if you did it in your sketchbook. So I'm going to jump back over here. And what you're going to do is select these. These are outlined so that they show up for you instead of changing the font. And you're going to pick 4. I will pick color. It's a relatively easy one, and space. I'll do size. I have some students that are very ambitious and they will ask me, what is a combination that nobody's ever done before or doesn't frequently do? When I show you examples, you'll see a lot of principles and elements that are repetitive because it's easy to think of natural solutions. And you'll even see some that are labeled as one, but they could be multiple things. For example, shape, it's that contained object. So if you're making a pattern, you also have shape. You might choose color, or color may not be your element, but you're still going to create a colored poster. You don't want to work in black and white. So you have color there, but it should be not the first thing I think of when I see your poster. But you can use these other things. It's natural to have them cross over. Okay, pattern. Let's do emphasis. And if you'd like to do this along with me, you're more than welcome to. And again, you can also work in your sketchbook. Contrast. And I like to turn them just for my own peace of mind. I like it lined up. And we'll do rhythm and movement. So I'm probably not going to fill out this whole grid in class, but I'm going to do a couple of them just to show you what I mean. So if I was working in my sketchbook as well, I would have, like, say, line and pattern. And then I would sketch out something in that square, and then I'd have emphasis and shape. So then I would go down, I'd do pattern and shape. So I could do and see how fast I'm doing this. This, like what I'm doing, especially if you're doing it in your sketchbook, it should be that fast. I'm on my second one. I'm going to go over to line and emphasis. Okay, so here's what I just did. Oh, it'd probably be easier if I stop screen sharing for a minute. This is what I just did in my sketchbook. I have my elements and my principles, and I started filling in the squares based on those. So for line and pattern, I just made like a hashtag plaid line, gingham, whatever you've seen. You've seen plenty of patterns made out of lines. Shape, I just alternated shapes. Emphasis and shape, I have one shape being emphasized, and then line and emphasis, there's a line that's emphasized. If you were to do this in Illustrator, you just pick your shapes from over here. So if I was doing color and pattern, oh yeah, let's make some circles. Let's move on. So color and pattern, then I would probably alternate those colors. So see how simple this should be for this grid. It's just an exercise to get you used to seeing these connections. And let's see, let's do one more. Shape, emphasis, shape, contrast. There we go, shape and contrast. The key is to know why you made the decision, because like I mentioned, a lot of these can be multiple. So For example, rhythm and line. Because of that movement in this line, it's just wavy lines, but multiplying it makes it have that sense of movement across the page. If I was doing shape and movement, maybe I'd want to do something where it looks like it's moving or getting bigger and things like that. And you can change the colors in here too, especially if you chose color as one of your elements. You definitely want to use the color from the swatches. If you're doing it in your sketchbook, you'll have to obtain some, and you choose color, pick something like a pen or something where you have some variation in color, but you can do it in here. Like I said, I like writing it out. I feel like you can make those connections faster. You're not trying to figure it out based on what's available to you. It's just coming from your brain onto the page. But if you do work in Illustrator, the cool thing about this is you can just take one and copy it, and you can start with your poster on that. So if I come back over to the assignment specifications, we're now ready for part 2. So you save your grid, you upload it, and there is a video here if you need to rewatch this. And then for your review, I relisted the elements of design and the principles of design. So again, the elements are the tools and the principles are how you use these tools. And what I want you to do after you've picked your 4 from the grid, I want you to pick either your favorite square or your favorite principle and element combination. And that is going to be the poster that you're going to create. And I want it to be, you're doing the entire grid. I'm not going to fill the whole thing in, but yes, like here. So it'll be completely filled in. You'll have something in every square. Just like here, there'd be something in every single square. So it's line and pattern, line and emphasis, line and contrast, line and rhythm and movement, shape pattern, shape emphasis, shape contrast, shape rhythm and movement. So some of these might be hard, especially as you get farther and farther down. But like I said, just try to find a solution. Not every single one of these squares has to be an art project. Put something in that square that you feel like is the best solution, or at least can be explained in some way, and then move on to the next square. But like I said, if you do it in this Illustrator grid provided for you, you can copy and paste it and use that as a starting point for your poster. So again, it's 11 by 17. A lot of students miss the size specification because I want it to feel big like a poster. These actually, the first couple semesters before COVID and we went virtual, students would actually print these out and bring them to class, and they were really fun to see. So we're just still working digitally, but I still want you to create an 11 by 17 inch document, and you will upload this digitally. So file, new, make sure you have inches selected, and you will put in 11 for the width and 17 for the height. So I want it to be long formatted, a long poster, just like you would see a poster hanging up on campus or something like that. You don't need to worry about bleeds or anything like that right now. And you don't even necessarily have to work in 300 DPI, but I always leave that on as a default. So then you will have a document that looks like this. And if I bring this in from my grid and copy this, it's shape and contrast, and I paste it here. See how tiny it started in? So then I can expand this, decide where I think it looks good on this page. And let me go back to the specifications. You're going to choose the square from your principle and elements of design grid, and you're going to refine that into an 11 by 17 poster. Your design should highlight the principle and element in a harmonious way. This means it should work together to create one cohesive design. Anyone who views this poster should have a better understanding of how these principles and elements work together for creative results. To begin, do a rough mock-up in your sketchbook. If you have already gotten your sketchbook, who actually listened to me and got a sketchbook designated for the class? It's okay if you didn't, but it'll really help you. And I'm gonna try to encourage you to sketch every time because it'll make you, yeah, if you already had one, that's great. So again, and it's just like deciding to use the digital grid versus the one by hand. If you just come in here and start moving things around, you're not putting, the ideas aren't coming from inside out. You're just kind of waiting to see if something happens. So that's what sketching is really great for. The poster should consist entirely of vector artwork and geometric or abstract shapes. So all artwork for the poster should be original work. Do not import JPEGs or photographs or icons of any kind. Do not use any patterns or symbols within the Illustrator palettes either. You will get to do that at some point, but for this assignment, it should just be straight vector artwork that you are creating. When I say patterns, some of you may not even know that you can do this, but some of these palettes in Illustrator actually have fill patterns that you can use. See that? So when I say don't use anything coming from Illustrator already, they have fill patterns and there's even symbols if you've explored those. If you haven't explored them, don't worry about it. It's fine for this time and you don't need another thing to think about, but you're just going to be using simple shapes or creating your own shapes. And again, I'll show you lots of examples after I'm done explaining this. Add the name of the design, principle, and element to your poster at the end. The type should be subtle secondary element, so it shouldn't be the most obvious thing on the page, but I still want it to fit and look really intentional. So keep in mind, I have students integrate it or really work it into the poster in creative ways that feels nice, but give the typographical hierarchy to the principle and then the element second. So here is another video. If you need to watch another video, this shows an example of the grid and see its line and emphasis, and then it turns into that poster line and emphasis. This is a really simple example that I did. And then there are 6 really beautiful examples from past students. So we have rhythm and shape. This one is so simple with those repeating circles, but it does look like you could just come up and tap it and it's like the sound of like the drum radiating out. So rhythm and shape, those circles are the shape and then it's creating that rhythm. Movement and line, this reminds me of a rainstorm. So again, a really creative solution, very simple, but it looks really nice. My critique of this one would have been the type is a little bit hard to see, but still overall, the choice of colors and then the movement of the line is really nice. This student was pretty advanced and really liked doing minimal design. And it was just their personal aesthetic. So this looks really nice. It's principles and elements, line and movement. There's a subtle movement because of the way that those points are coming up. They convey an arrow. There's probably better solutions to line and movement, but all of these other secondary elements really make it kind of it looks super intentional and clean and well designed. And I like the color palette too. So color and contrast. This is a creative solution where it's got 4 blocks of color, 4 shapes here, and they're alternating and contrasting colors. Emphasis and color. This is also shapes are being used to contain that color, and one color is emphasized by using a different color. I like these 2 examples, very similar because it's the same, it's both emphasis. However, shape is being used here to create that variation instead of just color. Now that you've seen some of them, are you starting to understand how to put it together? So you go from your grid and you're going to put it in as a poster. Any questions so far? Okay, so the way I grade projects is I use this rubric. So when you get your first score for this project, you will see a number out of 20, and that will be your score for the project. So just to kind of give you an idea of what you're going for here, I first do clarity of message. That will be your first number that's going to add up to 20. So anyone who views this presentation will better understand how the principles and elements of design work. The next thing I look at is it effective? How's the layout? So each square in the grid is treated as an individual piece of design, making for a dynamic layout. The design project is exceptionally attractive in terms of design layout, neatness, dominance, rhythm, size, etc. All graphics are related to the topic and make it easy to understand. And then I base it on creativity and originality. So it stands out, it's recognizable, it's memorable. The graphics and text used on the design project reflect an exceptional degree of student creativity in their creation. Participation and thoughtful consideration was given to the creative process. And then these are the easiest points to get. Assignment specifications means, did you just follow the instructions that I provided to you? And they're the easiest points to get and also the most common points to lose. So just make sure you read that project and the assignment really well. This is where you will lose points when you turn assignments in late. Like I mentioned, at any point, if you'd like to redo an assignment for a higher score, you are welcome to. If things are late, you'll lose assignment specification points and you'll start losing points from there, regardless of if you did it right or not. Now, you can always redo it. Like say you felt like you learned a new skill and your presentation and layout could be better, then you can redo it and get a higher score in those categories. But assignment specifications, again, you're just following the instructions. Did you make it the right size? Did you do what I asked you to do? Regardless of how difficult or how great it looks, did you give it a good try? So that's how I score things, just so you know. All right, so first up, this one is emphasis and color. And I thought that it was really creative use of shapes as well. So there's a sun that's the emphasized color, and then it's going into gray up and down. There's a lot of other elements coming into play here, but again, if I look at this and I'm like, this doesn't hit what you said it should be, we can talk about it. But as long as you have like, because there's going to be other connections. So if you can explain it and you can defend your design decisions, then it's a good design. So this one is emphasis and color. You can get really creative with it like that. It doesn't have to be like my examples that are always super simple and direct. Like these are really pretty simple choices, but this one was all drawn from scratch, and this person had a lot of fun with it. Okay, contrast and line. I think this is a really clever solution. It's just done in black and white, but those two lines are contrasting in the way that they're shaped and their thickness in the stroke weight. And then I even like how this is contained, and then there's some symmetrical balance going on here because it's cut down in half. So all of these things are things you can think about when you're designing. This one's really unusual. It's pattern and size. So it does have a repetitive pattern. It has a radial balance. The sizes are changing. Pattern is one of the most common ones that I push back on with people and ask, like, is this really a pattern? To me, this one is pretty much a contained object. I don't see this as a pattern because when I see a pattern, I want it to be repeating across the whole page, but I'll frequently get ones labeled as pattern where it's like just a couple objects on the page. So just keep that in mind if you choose pattern as one of your principles, and be sure you know how to use pattern and how to defend your work. So this one might seem unfair, but it is emphasis on color. So regardless of how much effort or what is on this page, it does work as a design solution for emphasis and color. So you can get really elaborate with this. or you can find a simple, creative solution that you know is accurate and that it works, and then just make it look nice. There's still a lot of choices to be had here, like the hierarchy between the typography, where this was placed on the page, where this negative space goes. So those are all things to think about, even when you see something like this, that's like, that's it, that's all. There's still a lot of design decisions happening here. So work within your skill set. You'll hear me say that a lot too. If you are new to Illustrator, don't jump in and start designing something that's really difficult for you. Just start easy, simple, small, basic shapes and work your way up. This one is a really lovely one because of the color palette. It's color and pattern. And again, I like this a lot as a solution to pattern. It's going across the whole page. The color is alternating to help you see that pattern. And as opposed to this one where it's contained in this object and the patterns in the object, I just feel like this one really reinforces pattern a little bit more. Movement and shape. Again, you know it's movement if you look at this and it looks like it's actually moving in some way. Looks like it's going back or it's coming forward. It almost looks like, you know, a portal or something you're walking through. Color choices here are really working well to add that contrast in between each of these shapes. I really like this one too. This is line and pattern. And again, this one's not filling up the whole page, but you're repeating it enough times that you really get that you have time for your pattern to set in. I've had people turn in pattern with 2 elements, and to me it has like, you need to repeat it a couple more times. But again, I'm open to anything. If you can defend it, there's a first time to show me something new, and if you can back it up, go for it. But I really like this one. I like the repeating pattern that's made with these lines. I do like the negative space that was left here and the symmetry where you line up the type and these shapes here. And I think it looks nice. This student was fairly advanced in her skill set. This many gradients and this many hearts might be a little challenging. You can see each one of these shapes in here. This was a lot of drawing. But if you know how to copy and paste and use the scale tool, something like this is not unachievable for you, even if you're starting out. But rhythm and color, again, you get that sense of it radiating or moving in and out of this piece. Line and balance. This is a really unusual shape that was given to me here, just something that was created out of your mind and put on a page. It's not referencing anything that we already know, like the shape. It kind of has tennis court vibes or pickleball. And then I like how the type is re-emphasizing the line with this line here. And then there's some nice symmetry happening to create that balance. Last example, balance and color. So really simple pattern. The color choices, the simplicity of the pattern, and a lot of these decisions, like keeping this pattern up in the top portion of this, and then the alignment of the type with this, really gives you that harmonious feeling. And there's a really nice sense of balance in this piece. Again, simple decisions. It's not very elaborate, but it could have easily not felt like this with color choices that maybe were too vibrant, or just keeping the pattern off a little bit, or not lining things up. These are all the examples. Before I send you off to work on these, let me go over a couple things, and let me jump over here real quick too. So that's the assignment. In this module, I also tell you, okay, so things you should learn during this lesson. Outline text. Converting text to outlines means turning text into graphic images instead of the text that you could type. So I'm going to show you that really quickly. Vector artwork, that is what we're doing in Illustrator. So if you are creating an Illustrator, you're creating vector artwork. direct selection arrow, and the artboard, which would probably have been helpful for some of you last week. But think of the artwork like a physical piece of paper, like it's your desk. Again, apologies for last week. I'm sorry. But again, you see here, it's not that obvious, or I wouldn't have listed it here on this assignment. So if you're in Illustrator, you probably learned last week, the black arrow picks up a whole object and you can move it. The white arrow is for moving around certain points in an object. If you type something out, and you should have also become familiar with the scale tool last week as well, but if you type something out, you can also convert it to outlines by just going to create outlines, and then your font won't change, it becomes shapes, but you also can't change what the type is saying if you need to. So typically I wait till the last minute to convert it to outlines. I can't remember quite why. You'll have to watch the video why I tell you that's important. When we do typography, it's very important, but I don't know if you'll really need to do this time, unless you want to do something like take a shape from a letter and use that as a starting point for one of your shapes and manipulate it. So if I want to take this S, for example, and then maybe I wanted to use it as a shape, I'm just erasing it. Then I could. So there's a lot you could do there. One thing I want to show you before I send you off is I want you all to know where your alignment tools are. I have mine down here. I'm going to pop it out. This will absolutely be your best friend if you're picking things like pattern, repetition, anytime you want to make sure things are lined up on the page. So if I make a series of squares here, and they're repeated. Right now I don't have any intentional balance. I have some negative space. There's not really some symmetry happening here, but I wanted to make a pattern because I picked pattern as my principal. I can use this alignment tool and then they'll all become this line. And let's say I have a top one and a bottom one. So I lined them all up because I hit the center button. And now I want them all to become evenly spaced within that. Then you can distribute the objects with this bottom line. And now they're all lined up perfectly for me. Then I can grab this whole thing and I'm holding Option, Command, Shift, and see how my arrow becomes a double arrow. And I can just copy that whole set over. And then if I select everything at once, I can pick it all up at once and move it. And look how quickly I just made a pattern. And then you can, you hold Shift down while you click on things, you can click on more than one thing. And then you can change the color. So use these alignment tools. They will be really helpful, especially if you're doing any kind of symmetry or pattern. You can see here my space between this and this and this is bigger than this space here. If you like a grid to really make sure that you're filling that space properly, hit Command and then hit the quote mark on your keyboard or the apostrophe. You can turn the grid off and on. And you also can hit Command R and your rulers go on. And then you could also drag these guides around. Like say I want to make sure I'm lining up everything on my artboard. And if you wanted to pull a guide into the middle of your page, then you know where your middle is. So those are just a few things that are going to be really helpful to you Again, align objects, distribute objects, all of these shape tools. And you can start with these shapes that are already provided, or you can build your own shapes and just have fun with it, experiment, do something really creative if you want to. If this is a really struggle for you, just try to find a really simple solution that you can make look nice. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So if you don't have any questions, you are free to go. That's it for this week. You're going to practice your principles and elements of design, and you will be making a poster to turn in next week. And next week we will do a critique where we'll show everybody's assignments and talk about them. Okay? Stick around if you have questions or need any one-on-one help.
Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
I was saying, I think I might just need some repetition, honestly, like, cause I've been sick all week and I finally like got around to it like yesterday during the day. I think I just might need repetition. Is there any like other like tutorials or just ways to get familiar with the stuff with the software, I guess?
Yeah, so if you go into the module,
Yeah.
let me screen share.
Because I saw the ones on the module as well, but
Yeah, there's a lot of you could start here and do these tutorials. If you open, gosh, how do you get there? Let me close everything. So if you go to learn,
okay.
so if you're open it, I always have it set to home and it shows like the last things I was working on because I'm lazy. So a lot of time I'll be like, oh, here it is, and just click and open it through here. But if you go under one and click on learn, there are all these tutorials in here to help you learn how to do things. And you'll probably even learn like a couple things that start constantly updating the software and adding new tools. And I mean, my knowledge of the software really was like early 2000s, and I'm still learning things and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know they added this new tool. I need to keep up to date. So like, no matter how long you've been doing this, they'll add new things that you have to learn. It's just a constant process. So you can just start exploring some of these. And I like that it tells you how, it should tell you how long it's going to take to do it. So if you have just a few minutes, and then try to look at what it's saying, like exploring shapes or jump into color, take a tour of the app and relate it to whatever we're working on to kind of help you. But these are really helpful and it'll start helping you like just explore new things. But yeah, I have videos uploaded, and then if I find, like I mentioned, I follow lots of design accounts and stuff. So I'll see like a new thing on social media where someone will show something in like a few seconds. Like it'll be like a TikTok or a reel. I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And so I'll start posting some of those things for all of you. But just practice, just get in the software and just start moving things around and seeing what happens, and it'll start to click.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm going to spend just some extra time where I'm not rushed and kind of look assignment over and play around and watch those videos as well so that I can just familiarize myself with the software.
Yeah, once you just get used to, when you first start, it's like, where is this? What does it do? And it's just constant questioning instead of knowing what you want to make and just being able to jump in and make it. So if you need a little extra time on the assignment, that's fine. Just spend more time getting comfortable with it. Or honestly, just turn something in, like when it's an assignment like that, where I just want you to get comfortable, turn it in and then experiment and do your own thing if you want to. It's like, don't stress about the assignment. It's the projects where I really want you to spend time being thoughtful and kind of work on creating something that looks really nice.
Got it. Okay. All right. I was thinking about trying to make an avocado and just on my own rather than doing like the lighthouse thing. So maybe, I don't know, I'll play around with it. I'll definitely turn something in. And so you're saying maybe like this weekend I could turn it in without getting.
Yeah, you can take a little bit of time
Okay.
and just and explore and figure it out. That's totally fine.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks.